We are in our series on faith. We're on our 5th lesson on faith. Today we're going to look at wet feet faith. Our first review last week. Last week we did trials that build faith. So I'll do a review of that. We talked about the fact that it's important to study God's character, because if you believe God does something unexpected, you can lose your faith. So if it's something you're not expecting God to do that He does, it may make you lose your faith. So it's good that we understand His character. So because sometimes if we see God do something we consider not fair or not right, without understanding how it works, it can harm our faith. For example, when a loved one dies or when tragedy happens.
That'll definitely shake you up. And
Yeah.
you'd be like, well, wait a minute, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to know that, you're right.
Yeah. So that's why we're looking at that. And so Satan also, he tries to give us false expectations of God so that we'll be disappointed and lose faith. We looked at 5 reasons why bad things happen. The fact that 1, Satan can cause it. Number 2, it can be that God caused it to bring you back to His will. Number 3, it could be a natural consequence of something you did. So there was no supernatural intervention, there was no God, there was no Satan. It's just a natural consequence of what you did. That's sowing and reaping. That's what happens when you do that. Number 4, God is trying to build your faith and change your character. So it's a trial from God, and it's meant to build your faith or change your character. And number 5 was that someone else is exercising their free will. So we took a deeper look at the one where God is building your faith and your character. So we see that sometimes you can have troubles but still be in God's will. So it's not necessarily because you were sinning or did something wrong. We took a deep look at a scenario where God tests you after He reveals your destiny. So we saw that was a pattern that God uses. Once He tells people their destiny, they go into trials. And so this is when you're in a trial, and the trial is meant to get you from where you are to where you need to be. And so we looked at examples of David that happened to. He got the promise, he had to go in the wilderness, flee from Saul. Jesus, that happened to. He got baptized, he went into the wilderness, get tempted by the devil. Joseph, that happened to. So we looked at a few examples of that. Talked about how when you're in a trial, you should cling to the promise. You should keep trusting God. Don't focus on your current circumstances. You should wait with anticipation, and you should continue to worship while you wait. So the trial is meant to perfect, to confirm, strengthen, and establish you. So that was last week. Any thoughts on last week? So
when you're in a trial, remember the promise?
Yes.
What else was it?
Oh, keep trusting God. Don't focus on your current circumstances.
That's something that's hard to do.
Yeah.
I find myself doing that.
Yeah, it's always hard to do. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of these things are said matter-of-factly, but.
But is that with worship? Worship helps you to keep your focus off of the circumstance.
Yeah, worship God while you wait.
Yeah.
It helps keep it, and it also helps if it is an attack from the enemy. It helps thwart the enemy worship. And wait with anticipation was the other one.
Also, just talk about other people, let other people kind of shape our faith as well. We talk about that.
Yeah, and other people exercising their free will is one of the reasons you could be in a bad
Right.
situation. That's one Brian brought up.
I wrote that.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So now we will get into wet feet faith. Wet feet faith is faith when you face a challenge with confidence, knowing that God will show up. So it's when you have to get your feet wet first. So you don't see God until you start it. you have to get your feet wet
Say it
first.
again?
When you face what?
When you face a challenge with
Oh.
confidence,
Oh, okay.
knowing that God will show up. So you have to get your feet wet. So we're going to look at examples of dry feet faith, wet feet faith, and cold feet faith. If we get to cold feet faith, we'll see how much discussion we have. So we're going to start with dry feet faith. So any thoughts on what the dry feet faith example will be?
No idea.
No idea.
Are you talking about like a character in the Bible or someone in the Bible?
Story in the Bible.
Oh, a story.
Peter?
Dry feet, I would say Moses.
I'm going to try to not cheat by looking at Exodus. Looking at Exodus.
I don't know, I just
Moses.
guessed.
What about Moses?
Good guess.
Oh, because Moses, the dry feet is because the story where there was the fire, he had to remove his shoes.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
That's why I
Count
said
God.
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
you know, feet, and then also, that's
Okay.
the reason why.
Yeah.
I
So-
would assume it's the opposite of wet feet.
All right. So dry feet faith. We're going to look at the story of Moses parting the Red Sea,
Oh.
and so you'll understand as we get into it. So background of the story: the Israelites were in captivity in Egypt. They just got freed from Egypt. God had performed the 10 plagues,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Pharaoh decided to let them go.
Yeah. Yeah.
God hardened his heart, and as they were
Right.
leaving, he went to chase after
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
So he's chasing
Yeah.
after them. So at this point, the Israelites hadn't had much experience with God. They got Pharaoh chasing them.
Now, why were they held in captivity?
Why were they held in captivity? Because they went to Egypt when there was a famine. So it's a long. So Joseph was a Israelite, and he got captured there, but then he became a ruler. There was a famine, so the Israelites went to Egypt to escape. Joseph was in charge, so he took care of them, and eventually they got put into slavery.
The Israelites were the Israelis, right? From
The
Israel?
Jews,
The Jews.
yes, they were
God's chosen
descendants of Israel, of Jacob. Yes. Okay. So now we're going to look at Exodus 14, 13 to 16, 26 through 30. It says, "But Moses said to the people, 'Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again forever. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent.' Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. As for you, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the sons of Israel shall go through the midst of the sea on dry land.' So they walked through the sea on dry land. Dry feet. So then we go to verse 26. Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may come over the Egyptians, over their chariots and over their horsemen.' So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal state at daybreak, while the Egyptians were fleeing right into it. Then the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, even Pharaoh's entire army that had gone into the sea after them. Not even one of them remained. But the sons of Israel walked on dry land through the midst of the sea, and the waters were like a wall to them on their right and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore." So Moses had told the people that God was going to fight for them. Then he parted the Red Sea. Then the Israelites crossed on dry land, And then God closed the water and killed all the army.
Because they were pursuing the Israelites.
They were pursuing him, right? So dry feet faith is when God fights your battle for you. So we see they walked on dry land. They didn't have to get their feet wet. So dry feet faith is when God fights the battle for you. So an example of that I can think of is when about 5 years ago I started a business called Road Warrior Network, and it's a networking company. But it was the result of me being laid off. So I'd gotten laid off from my company and didn't know what I was going to do. Had thought about starting a business, didn't know what kind. I said, but I'll never start a consulting business, which is what my job was. But when I got laid off, one of my coworkers, he started talking to me. He said, hey, you should start a company, this. And I was like, I don't know. And so eventually I started talking with that guy like almost every day, multiple times a week, and said, okay, I'll do this, and started. And he kind of like, I would talk to him often, if you call him 11 o'clock at night, he had a family so I started, I had someone that had called me and offered me a job before a company, and so I called them up and said, could I get a contract instead of, working for you? And things kind of lined up, a door opened through another company, Deloitte, that I got my first contract, and so it was a month after I got my last paycheck from my company. I was working through another company, and their client happened to be my first company. So a month after they paid me, I was like, hi, I'm Michael. I'm from Deloitte. You're paying me 50% more than you did last month. And another guy who had gotten laid off, he had been calling me saying, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We got laid off. I was like, I don't know, I got laid off too. But then, so I said, well, hey, we're gonna start a company, and maybe I'll start a network of independent consultants. So he said, okay. So I got him in, got a contract with him, and then ended up bringing him into the company I was working with. So he was my first person bringing in, and everything just kind of lined up. Everything lined up. So the situation was I didn't have an option to stay where I was because I could not work. I didn't have an option to go back where I was before. So as the doors opened, I kind of didn't really have a choice but to follow the path as the doors opened up. And I didn't have a reason not to go through. It's like, okay, this looks like a good opportunity, so let me take it. I mean, I had to do work, but it's like I saw the opportunity and I opened this. So dry feet faith is when God lets you know he's going to do something before he does it. So he lets you know ahead of time he's going to do it, and you don't really have another option. So the Israelites, they didn't really have another option.
Yeah.
No, they sure didn't.
That number 11 goes right on their back.
Yeah.
You had to go forward.
Yeah. So in dry feet faith, you don't have a choice but to be obedient to what God tells you to do.
Right.
So the Israelites had the choice of die or move forward, and you can only choose. So you can choose whether you want to stress about it or not. But that's about it. And so it does build your faith, but it doesn't take a super amount of faith to be obedient because you don't really have a choice. So it's kind of like, I think of, it may be a bad example, but when I hear the stories of like when they talk about the courageous miners that were trapped underground for 3 days.
I was reading that in today's daily bread. It was an old daily bread. So that's what I use when I'm warming up my car in the morning. I feel when I'm done reading that story, then I'm ready to go to work. I was reading that story in the Daily Bread about the miners today. It's funny to read.
Oh, okay. Wow,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, they were down there for so many days, and they were like, does anybody know we're here? From the surface, everything's fine. We have everything we need up here, but down below ground, they needed water, food, and medicine.
Right.
And that was a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, and they got out.
They got out.
And everyone talks about the courageous miners. And I was happy I got out, and it was a sad story, but I'm thinking, do you have to be courageous to survive? It's like, because, it's like,
You have a choice.
you have to not die, pretty much.
You have to not
get up.
give up.
Not give
Yeah,
up.
right.
If
That's
you
about
give
the
up-
only thing
if
that
you
I'm-
give up
Right.
and you don't die, you still get out.
it's true, but if you give up, you're a lot less likely to not die.
Well, yeah, depends on how
I
long
guess.
you're on there.
I guess.
Potentially.
If that sentence makes any sense.
I would think that if you give up, you start dying, don't you? If you're like, forget it, I'm gonna die anyway. I might just start dying now.
Yeah.
Long,
Yeah,
slow,
that's-
painful death.
But yeah.
That
So
like
it's-
despair set
Right.
up. Like,
Yeah.
So basically, dry feet faith then is
That's-
as long as you don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can't give
Dry
up.
feet faith is don't give up,
Sure.
and you'll
Yeah.
make it through. So
But-
the Lord is going to fight for you. Go
But I
ahead.
see what you mean. Like there wasn't a ton that they really did other than hang in there.
Yeah, it's probably an insensitive example,
Well.
but yeah. So verse 14 said, "The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent."
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
It was so Exodus
Okay.
14:14.
Get it.
The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent. So that's dry feet faith. The Lord fights for you while you keep silent. So what did the Israelites do to defeat Pharaoh? Nothing. They didn't do anything. So God did everything, and they watched. So the waters were parted. So the waters were parted before they got into the sea. So they walked on dry land. They had dry feet. They already saw the miracle. So they saw the miracle first, and then they stepped in the water. So God showed a miracle, and then they followed him. So they saw a miracle first. So when the sea parted, they knew God was involved, and that he gave them that assurance. So Moses led them, and they just stood back and watched. The Lord fought while they kept silent. None of the Egyptians remained. So God killed all the Egyptians. They had to go forward and not give up.
He drowned them. He drowned everybody.
Yes. Yeah. So now we look at Moses in this story. So Moses, I mentioned that, all of the lessons are pretty much given to me or for me, like something I'm going through, and then I just tell you guys. So, but I usually don't necessarily tell the part for me, but today I'll give the parts for me. So Moses as a leader, what Moses, he was telling the people, don't fear. So he was leading by faith. So he was encouraging to go forward. But he had to encourage them before God told him, hey, I'm going to part the sea. So he was encouraging them to go forward, but he didn't know what the plan was yet. So that's one of the things you have to do as a leader. So Moses was confidently talking to them, but then if you look, he was also crying to God. So Moses gave the glory to God before the miracle. And in verse 5,
knowing that God was going to work
he knew that God was going to work it out, but he didn't know what God was going to do.
Right. He knew everything was going to be all right.
Right.
Yeah.
So in verse 15, the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. So Moses was telling them, go forward, but Moses was scared. He was confidently telling them to go forward, but yet he was crying to God. But he had to trust God first, and he had to have faith before so he had to have faith and trust God and tell people to move forward before he saw the miracle. So they moved forward after they saw the miracle, but Moses had to tell them to move forward before. So he's like, move forward. There's just a big sea there, but he's still telling them to go. And then God tells them the plan. So this is dry feet faith is applicable to us, but it's the kind of faith that new believers have. So this is the faith when they're beginning their journey. This is the beginning of the Israelites' journey. They just started there. They haven't got 40 years in the desert, in the wilderness yet. They're just setting out. So the beginning of their journey, they didn't have much faith yet. A lot of them never got it. So dry feet faith is the faith of a new believer. They need God to perform a miracle before they'll trust Him. So that shouldn't be the type of
I
faith
just
that we
recently
have.
went through that same thing where I got that off the job where I was at, But he's like, you know, he goes, if you're in Christ, actually he's a pastor up in Hayford. He says, if you're in Christ and Christ is in you, this is not your doing, this is God's doing. He's got something else better for you. And I'm like, really, you really think? He's like, yeah, I totally believe that. Something better's gonna come up. Then I had an interview at this one company, and that interview fell through. I mean, it was good, but then they decided to take a different route because they couldn't afford the job I was looking for. I was like, okay, that one fell through. And then I got an interview at another place, and then that one fell through. I was like, man, really? What, I mean, is this just a test? But I kept saying, you know what, something better's going to happen. Something better. I know God's going to work with me because I'm God. He's in me. I'm a firm believer in that, and I'm right there in the Word. And I kept thinking to myself, something better's going to happen. Sure enough, the following week I had 2 job offers on the same day.
Amen.
And the one that I got was actually a better job than I was at before for 5 years. A better pay and better location, better people, way better everything. I'm just a lot happier. And it was keeping that faith, but I was going through some weeks. I was like, man, really? I even took off a week. I went up north to Reading, my buddy's place for a week. I think I split out. Well, you guys had a Bible study at that time.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to be out of town. So I took off to go clear my head up because I was just stressing over nothing.
Right.
And I had enough money, but I was like stressing because I didn't know what was going to happen. Not knowing the not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I had my faith, but I still had stress.
Right. And then once God shows up, then it strengthens your faith.
That stress is gone.
And then like I was only there a couple of weeks, and I got injured, and I took some days off. So I thought, well, my check's gonna be short. I expected it to be short, but I was still going to be okay. And the girl's like, you know what? She goes, because her mom owns a company. She says, my mom decided to pay for the days that you were out. I'm like, really? I just started with you. I think you guys were gonna can me. You guys are gonna pay me for the days I was out. I'm like, this is too good to be true. I won't really like you. I'm like, well, I really like you guys. So it was, and that's the Lord, you know, before I even say it, He knows.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Amen. He's a good God.
Any other thoughts on the dry feet?
Well, I had an example too. I was renting at the time, and there was this one renter. We just didn't get along because they were parking and doing everything wrong. You know what they weren't supposed to do. They were like parking in my space, and I would kindly go over there and be like, "Can you please?" You know. And then I just said, "You know what? Let me pray. Let me pray because I don't want to go over there and start anything or anything like that." I prayed, and I think like 2 weeks later, that person moved out.
Wow.
I was like, whoa. And another person came in, and they were just as friendly and nice, and oh, I'm sorry. And if they did anything out of order, they would come over and rectify. I was like, the Lord moved on that. Yeah. And I didn't have to go over there like, what'd you say? What'd you do? You know, I didn't have to do all that. I just prayed. I said, I'm going to give it to Him.
Lord works in mysterious ways. Even the smallest things.
Even the smallest things.
Smallest things and big things.
Smallest
Totally
things.
believe that.
Yeah.
Moved out.
Any other thoughts?
Is this the same thing as what we were talking about last week, where you said that sometimes God will reveal something to you, but He won't do it right away? Like there's a period of time before He actually does it, or is this more about non-believers?
Yeah, this is different. This is more where He reveals it to you and does it. So I mean, it's he shows it. You know, he gives you confidence before you get into the struggle. So he reassures you before you get into the struggle. So in dry feet faith. It's okay. All right. So now we'll look at wet feet faith. So wet feet faith, we're going to look at the story of God parting the Jordan River. So God parted the Jordan River at the end of the Israelites' journey. So they got out of Egypt, they crossed the Red Sea, get into the wilderness. They were in the wilderness 40 years. They were trying to get to the Promised Land. So before they got to the Promised Land, they had to cross the Jordan. So this is the end of their journey, where they had been through 40 years of walking with God, leading them by pillar of fire by day and a cloud by day, pillar of fire by night. And so here in this, where we're starting at, Moses had just died. So they had wandered in the desert for 40 years. God appointed Joshua the leader.
Yeah.
So the spies had spied out the land, and Rahab helped them. And now they had to cross over the Jordan into the promised land.
It was 40 years or 40 days?
40 years.
40 years, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, at the start of it, God said, because they initially spied out the land for 40 days, and then they said, hey, it's giants there, we're not going to go. And they were scared. So God said, I'm going to send you in the desert 1 year for every day you spied out the land. And Jesus was in the desert for 40 days. And Moses, the ark was on for 40 days and 40 nights. So let's see. So you have Joshua 3, 1 through 17. So it's quite a bit of story. I may stop you a couple times.
No worries.
Oh, will I?
Just let me know. Yeah, just let me know. Early in the morning, Joshua and the Israelites set out to Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the Levitical priest carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. You keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it.
Okay, so who gave this command? The officers. So the officers told the people that. Okay.
So Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Joshua said to the priest, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of Israel, so they may not know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, yep, the Hivites, the Perizzites, yep, the Girgashites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites.
Okay, so this is your first time during this reading those words, right? So God just told Joshua what he was going to do, but you didn't read none of that in what God said, right? None
The
of
Lord
ice.
itself?
Yeah.
Wait, did I miss something? Or?
No,
Oh,
no,
you're asking me a question?
no.
Joshua said
Well, I'm asking everybody.
Oh.
Well, no, just notice. God didn't say that.
right.
Okay.
Joshua
Go ahead.
said
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, Joshua
Yeah.
said it. Yeah. Okay. Behold, go ahead.
Oh, you want me to continue? Or?
Yes.
See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priest carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage, all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam, in the vicinity of Zareth, while the water flowing down to the sea of the Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground.
All right. So they crossed over the Jordan. So when Moses parted the Red Sea, the waters parted before anybody got to it. So here, the priests had to get their feet wet before the water moved.
How about when the sea first parted, when they were still?
Oh no! In the story we just read, so the first story we first read, Moses parted it. Everybody's feet were dry. So in this story, the priests had to get their feet wet first. So wet feet faith is when you have to step into the water before you see the miracle. So you have to get your feet wet
When you
before
don't
God
see the,
shows up.
sorry. And like when you don't see the whole picture, but God's telling you to take this step and
Right.
maybe it doesn't make all
Trust.
sense, but He's telling you to move forward or something.
Right.
Mhm.
Or even you're maybe not even clear as God's telling you.
Right.
And you move forward. You have to move
Moving
forward. He
forward.
shows up. The miracle happens after you've stepped out.
So what if you faith is have stepped into the water, knowing God's going to be there for you?
That's
Yeah.
cold feet.
Step into the water before seeing the miracle.
That's cold feet faith, right?
That's wet feet.
That's still wet feet?
That's wet feet. Yeah. So that's wet feet faith.
Oh, that's right, because you're faced with the challenge. Got it.
Yeah. So an example of that I'm thinking of is when we started this Bible study. So some of us were in the singles Bible study. So I had when I grew up, I was, really active. I was, youth usher, youth choir, male chorus, junior layman, chairman of junior deacon board. I was second vice president of state youth usher board. I was doing all stuff. I had written speeches that people gave. I spoke. I was doing everything. And then after I graduated and moved up here, I went to church one day. Then after church, I was like, I could just leave. I was like, oh, so this is great. So I didn't get involved. And so that was going good for 20 years. I didn't do anything. I was like, I didn't do anything. I'm going to be the pew guy. I'm just going to, all right, service over, let's go. Good message or bad message or whatever. Just judge the message and leave.
Whatever.
Nobody said that.
Yeah. Nobody said, didn't have any obligations. And then at some point, God told me, He said, okay, I want you to teach. I said, oh, okay. It's like, well, I tutored in college, so I guess, okay, I'll teach. And then, so I was like, okay, I'm fine, I'll teach. And then I was kind of like, teach what to who? And so a few of us were in the Bible study, and we had lost a couple of great teachers, and it was dwindling down.
Right.
And then one day they handed out things, say anybody who wants to, participate in something. I said, okay, I signed up to teach. I said, okay, this must be what it is. Then I didn't hear back from anybody. I was like, okay. And then in there was a few of us were at a table, and a lot of people were leaving and not happy anymore. And so a few of us were saying, well, we should start up a Bible study. We should start our own Bible study. I was like, yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then at the same time at church they said, hey, if you want to start a growth group, you can sign up to be a growth group leader. I said, oh, maybe that must be it. So I signed up to be a growth group leader. And then the next Sunday they said, oh, we're going to have a meeting for all the growth group leaders. I said, okay. So I went to the meeting. I said, this must be it. So it was 5 or 6 of us. And then after the meeting, a couple weeks later, I get an email saying, you have been assigned to this growth group. And they assigned me to, there was another couple there assigned me to their growth group. Well, assigned to a growth group. I was like, this is not teaching. And then I found out later it was just the 3 of us. I was like, well, that's not what I was trying to do. And then so we were in the Bible study, and I don't know if it was Maria. I was like, yeah, we should really start a Bible study. She said,
We'll do our own.
I was like, yeah, I'll teach it. And there was a bunch of us, Josie, Norma. We were like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it. Maria said, yeah, we can have it at my place. And I was like, okay. So we started, and there was a bunch of us, and I was, trying to get people together, and we were gonna do it, and so we got it together, and I had been so all this time, and I'm like encouraging people, yeah, we should do it. Let's do this. So we're going, and then a couple weeks before, I'm going, well, I don't never really taught a Bible study before. I don't really know what I'm going to teach.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's
Yeah, that is.
But I had been studying seeking God for like 9 months. I said, okay, I've got all this material and put it together. So I put it together. And then I went there. Maria was there. Like I said, and I was like, okay, I'm ready for all the people to come. We're gonna get this thing. And Norma came, and we waited for the rest of the people. There was no rest of the people.
For a couple months, yeah, no.
And I was like,
No, you were the next.
I was like, okay. I was like, I don't think this is it either. This might not be what God was calling me to. But then at the end of the lesson, Norma said, oh, Michael, bless your heart. That, this is what I really needed. This was really a blessing to me. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is it. And so.
Do you remember too, like sometimes with the lessons, he would give one class, and then he'd keep going, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know that was going to be a whole extent. He's like, yeah, I didn't either. Or
like a series.
A series,
It's all over series. So I taught us like seeking God. That's all I do. I said, okay, I got seeking God. Then it was around Christmas. I said, well, I did a study on the three wise men, so let me do that. And then I kind of gave it a slant of hearing from God. And then I said, well, I know a little about prayer, so I taught something on prayer. And I said, wait, seeking God, hearing from God, talking to God. I said, oh, wait, this is a series. God.
Yeah.
So it'd be serious. So then, and it was like as we went, that would happen. And then the next Sunday, a lot of the main points the pastor would preach on. Then it was like, okay, this must be, you hear the same message. It's like, oh, that's funny. So it's like, okay, this must be from God. And so it was, so God confirmed it afterwards. And then somebody, Carissa called me and said, okay, well, hey, the growth group leaders are supposed to come in here. And I'm like, well, I'm not really a growth group leader. So then I got folded into that. It got folded into the Abundant Life groups. And it's like, okay, well, now you're a leader since you're one of the, oh, okay, I guess. And then Maria moved, and then it was like, I was like, oh, well, I guess we can move it in Abundant Life if it's part of Abundant Life. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of fell together.
Yeah.
It kind of fell together. So what faith is when you're obedient before you know the plan. So you haven't seen God show up yet, but you're still obedient. So we saw in the story that said God is doing something new. You haven't passed this way before. So it said you haven't passed this way before. So you're going in unfamiliar territory with wet feet faith. So the confirmation follows the obedience. So with the story of the Red Sea, they got the confirmation first. Moses said, God's going to show up for you. And he parted the Red Sea. He parted the sea. That was pretty much confirmation. Okay, God is with us. So wet feet faith, they didn't get the confirmation until they stepped into the water. So the priest had to step into the water. So God had a plan. His plan was he was going to set Joshua, exalt him as a new leader. But Joshua didn't know that. Other people didn't know that. So if we look at, now let's look at Joshua as the leader in that situation. So he was leading before he got the confirmation. He told the people, yes, go ahead, put the ark out first. And he sent them out, but he didn't get the confirmation. God, that was before God told him about the story. But then once God told him, hey, I'm going to exalt you as leader, the priests are going to step in the water. As soon as they step in, I'm going to open up the water. So he knew how they were going to get across. Then he went and told the people, hey, the priests are going to get in the water, and when you get there, they're going to open up the water. Oh, and we're going to whip the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Gargasites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. It's like, wait a minute. He put a little extra.
The parasites? Oh.
the
Parasite.
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 Like you put a little extra up there.
And the Jebus.
God didn't say all of that, but he had confidence. He had confidence that God was going to be with him, so he extrapolated. Okay, they're there, so we're gonna be able to defeat them all. So God didn't exactly say that, but God's presence was there, so he was assured of it. So Joshua told the priest to take the ark and go ahead of the people, and so God parted the sea after they got into it. So God told the priest to go ahead of the people before God told Joshua the plan. So in the story of Moses, the leader, Moses parted the Red Sea. But in this story, Joshua, before he knew the plan, he told the priest to go out ahead of everybody
In the water.
in the water. So God went with that. So okay, well this is Joshua's plan, so we're going to start from there. So God started where Joshua led off. So Joshua had to go ahead and get his feet wet. He had to step out before he had a plan. And God picked up where Joshua left off. So we don't know if God may have had Joshua do it if he had started it from the beginning. But Joshua already told the priest to go ahead, which is kind of interesting. Because there's the water over there. The priest, you guys go first with the ark.
Put the ark in there.
He was like, you guys go first.
Yeah.
And God ran with that. So he said, okay, the priest going first, so that's what we're going to use. When the priest's feet touch, we're going to split the sea. So when you step out and you have assurance, then God will use your plan. So God will use what you're already going with. So just like last week we looked at, God told Moses, the first time he told him to hit the rock and water come out. Second time he told him to talk to the rock. And Moses instead hit the rock, which is not what God told him, but God still brought water out.
Right.
Right.
So Moses disobeyed God, but God still went with what Moses did, but he reprimanded him later.
Right.
But he still went ahead with what Moses' part. Moses hit the rock, and God put water out of it. Even though that wasn't his plan, and he was disappointed with Moses, but he still went ahead with what Moses had started with, because Moses had been obedient up until that point. So we saw the officers here. They also had faith, because they told the leaders, they told the people to go ahead, and the officers told the people to go through, and God didn't even speak to them. So they hadn't heard the command from God. And then the priests, they're the ones who had to go into the river. So they had faith. So they had the ark. They had the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant where God was God's throne on earth. So they had the ark with them. So they had confidence. But God told the plan to Joshua. So the miracle confirmed that God was with them. So it says, when the soles of their feet hit the water, immediately the water split. So as soon as it hit, the water split. So they had to exhibit the faith first, though. They had to step into the water first. So that's the wet feet faith.
So in short, what would you call a wet feet faith? Have to step into the water knowing he will be there, knowing that he's going to see you through it.
Yes, when you're obedient before you know the plan, or it's when you have to step out before seeing God, before getting confirmation from God.
I think the challenge in this, though, is what they're saying is like when the water was already at its flooded state, and
Right.
here they are holding this ark,
Mhm.
and
And they're walking forward.
they've been told to go ahead
Right.
and keep going, and then they just followed that. The moment that even though the water was at full flooding, they still took that step out, and once they got to that point, which was their challenge, right?
Right.
That's when God.
Because God seen that they were being, he wanted to see how far they would go.
Well, he told them the plan was as soon as they stepped in it, it would
Right,
open up.
but you had to step in it first.
Yeah,
You had to give
you
your
have to
feet
step in it first. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That
So-
that reminded me kind of like the test with Abraham, with the son.
Oh, with the son.
Yeah.
Right. He took him up there. He took him up there to know what he was going to do.
Right.
The son
Yeah.
didn't know, but he went up there with full intention to carry it out.
Right.
At
Yeah.
the last minute,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's exactly that. It's like you have to be obedient
Right.
first,
Yeah.
right,
and
first.
then you see the miracle.
Right.
Then God shows up. It's like being obedient first.
Where did I read that? Where how do we go? People want a sign from God in order to be faithful. But God wants you to be faithful in order to see a sign from God first.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah,
First be faithful, then I'll show you.
right,
And men or people, the world are like, show me, then I'll be faithful.
right, exactly. Yes.
I'm just thinking about that. Like, it's such a, the word is sensitive, but a crucial time to be in that place where you're hearing God to tell you to take that step. And it's such an important time to be sensitive to the voice of God, because I think that there's so many times that maybe we have, or I have missed out on opportunities because I'm just like, no, it's not God. It doesn't make sense, so no. You know, and I keep thinking, had I been obedient every single time, like, what I could have seen. And maybe the things that I did see, and if I was too scared to take a first step because I didn't see the whole picture, what I would have missed out on.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you don't step out, if you don't cross that barrier, that scary place, even though you feel like God is telling you to do it.
Yeah.
The question is, what is your Jordan?
Right.
What is your Jordan that you need to cross? Is God calling you to a deeper place? So it might be that. So some people you may be waiting on God, but God may be waiting on you to dip your feet into the water. And so He'll show Himself after you get your feet wet.
Once you've proven that you're worthy to get your feet wet.
Yeah. So instead of waiting for God to remove the obstacles, He may be waiting on you. And He'll remove the obstacles after you obey. And so you have to take that first step out on faith. You have to get your feet wet. And so Joshua told the people, he said, consecrate yourselves. The Lord is going to do wonders. So he told them that they had to purify them, sanctify themselves before the miracle. So we want to make sure to get right with God in preparation for the miracle. And they saw God's presence was with them. So they knew God's presence was with them because they had the Ark of the Covenant. So we know the Ark of the Covenant was God's throne, and that was God's dwelling place on earth. And that's why the priests had the confidence, because they had God's dwelling place on earth with them. And so now that we have Jesus, God's dwelling place on earth is in us. So we should be able to step out with confidence, knowing that God is with us.
Knowing your heart.
So you can go ahead and get your feet wet.
Done that.
Any thoughts on the wet feet faith?
I think that's what our daily messages are every week at church.
Wet feet faith?
Yeah, I think God uses, this is just my opinion, but the pastors are really guiding you on regards to having your faith, and I think that's the message that's driven every sermon almost in regards to the overall purpose of being involved in church and understanding that. It's not to just know God, but it's also to strengthen your faith, and there's always a message around where does your faith lie? Either is it strong, is it not, if you're going through challenges. At the end of the day, I think it's still a matter of, do you have any faith at all?
Any faith.
Yeah, whether it's wet, dry, or cold.
Well, first you gotta have dry
Mustard
feet.
seed.
Yeah, but you get, at the end of the day, you have the new believers, right? You have the new believers that come and they try to reach out, but then you have those who are regulars, right? And still, it's a challenge for you to maintain your faith, because you are faced with challenges, and I think the opposite of faith is fear. You deal with so many fears, right? Whether it's financial, physical, or anything like that. It's just that fear is so powerful to where you forget that you have this faith inside of you, and it's like a reminder of the minister telling you, these are the things that God has given us as a challenge, and this is what we're going to walk through in life. But take this message so that you can continue your faith on and in. I, to me, that's what I get when I get out of church. Like I see that I have not had a strong faith this week in certain situations. I probably did have a strong faith, like, you know, the different situations that you went through. There's certain things at the end of the day, it's like I feel like my faith is constantly being tested.
Right.
Whether it's, did you believe, did you see that this is happening, did you hear the voice of God, or anything like that, or were you just walking in fear?
Right.
And it's, you know,
Yeah, a lot of times we start out with faith and then we get fearful,
right.
and that's cold feet faith.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lisa.
No, no.
So you have, right, like on Sunday, you know, you hear the message and you'll be strong and you'll be pumped up, right? And then it starts throughout the week, it just starts dwindling down, and then you come back to Sunday,
Yeah.
you hear the message, you're like, you're strong again, right? And you get that faith again, and like you still keep the faith, but things happen throughout the week, and you're just like, you know, it's hard.
Yeah, it's because your circumstances, you focus on the circumstances.
Right.
This happened, and then you start kind of not thinking about God
Forget
first
about the message,
necessarily.
right?
Like,
Yeah,
oh,
on
what
Sunday,
if this?
that's where it's been a few
What if
days.
this? What if that?
Yeah.
Not necessarily thinking, oh, God has got me. It's like not the first thought you go to, not the first place you go to.
I think a rough free faith, I think it's something in the unknown that you're
Right,
going
unknown.
through in the situation of your trial. But if you try to grow and develop being a mature believer as you pray and you study your Bible and you go into your Word of God and you start maturing as a believer, you know how to go into what be faithful for with other stuff. When you
Right.
have new stuff coming, then you would have prepared yourself to go into that. Even
Right.
though it may be unknown,
Right.
frustrating sometimes. My kids might go, so it's frustrating, I don't know what to do. But I have to seek God's wisdom to find the answer. Okay, this is what I'm going to go through in this trial to strengthen me more. They had a new experience. It's just, I think it's just another test.
Yeah, and think about the previous times.
The previous times,
You
yeah.
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sometimes we just say, oh, forget this, I'm going to put it aside. You know, but you have to stay strong in God, you really do. He's the final answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Oh, I just wanted to say that when you have the wet feet faith, you have to always remember who he is. Like, I think that, like, when you start thinking about who he is, like, creator of the earth, like, okay, my little thing doesn't even mean anything. You know what I mean? Like, when you start thinking about, like, how big he is, then you're like, oh, he can handle it. You know, I mean, when you start thinking what he did for us and who he is, then that's what helps me. You know, I start naming who he is. You know, he's my provider. You know, he's Alpha and Omega. You know, things like that. Just reminding yourself, and then your fear starts to come down too. You know, when you start reminding yourself about who he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, stuff that's happening here on Earth.
Right.
My little Dr. Bill, he'll help me with that. That's nothing. Or finances that we think, oh man, how am I gonna do this?
Right. If you look and say, Jesus,
Yeah.
if God did this,
Yeah.
Jesus can do that, then this issue I have shouldn't be shouldn't be a big obstacle.
Right.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that the same. I have one of my biggest fears is driving across bridges. So I don't go to Oakland. I don't go to San Francisco. I don't even like high rises, like really high rises. So I get this huge anxiety. But the most anxiety kicks in on bridges, driving across bridges.
My sister's like that.
You know,
What were you gonna say?
so as I get older, the anxiety gets worse. And I'm a firm believer in God, and when I don't think about it, I've done it. So I have driven over the majority of all the bridges here in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
And more sometimes if it's for work, I'm like, I've got to do it. And each time I have made it back with a sense of relief, and I pray the entire time that I get there. But the fear itself, I think now I've just been avoiding it. So if I can find a way without having to take the bridge or take a high overpass or something, I find another way around it. So I haven't faced my fears, which is something that I've done it before. I've even done zip lining. You know, and I even tried to. So it's a fear of heights that I have.
Yeah.
You zip line?
I do, and it was even. I don't do it regularly, but I've done that, and then I'm not afraid to fly. So
With that bridge.
It's just something in There's something in it, and I
The
keep
water.
praying for it. I have no idea. I think it's I just don't feel like I trust myself in regards to having full control over it. When I see the anxiety already coming, and then it's like, so I had a really a moment where I stopped. And I had my sister and my niece in the car, and that's my biggest fear is having someone else in the car. I can do it by myself, but when someone else's life is in that, it's when I have more anxiety. And I wasn't prepared to go over this ramp, and I just stopped. And my sister and my niece, they're all freaking out, and I'm freaking out. You know, but I felt at that point, that's when I knew then that I said, this is where I have an issue. And it just lets you know where my faith is at this moment. Like, I didn't think about it that moment. All I thought of, like, this is not going to work. I need to stop now. I'm just not prepared. But it sounds easy to just have faith and understand that you're going to get past, you're going to conquer all your fears. But as a human,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
hard.
I prayed and prayed over this as years and years go by. The anxiety just goes further and further. And I'm still trying to find a solution for that.
Did you say you live in high rises or you want to live in high rises?
No, I don't live in a high rise, but just driving over like high overpasses.
Yeah.
It's like Oakland has got like when you go to Walnut Creek or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
All of those are like fairly high, so I don't go that way.
Yeah.
But I have
Stick to
driven
the ground
to
where you can see.
I have driven to Bodega Bay, so I've had to take the Benicia Bridge
Yeah.
and things like that. But it's just random oddness.
Certain
I wouldn't do it
times.
right now. I have to prepare myself for it. But at the end of the day, it's like I have a strong faith in God. I believe in God and anything, but I just do not trust I'm going to make it past that bridge alive or something like that. So it's just these
It's
random
an area, yeah.
I don't know. So I just pray for me, you guys.
Okay.
You know?
Pray for you.
As I continue to pray for that, but I guess that's where we're going into is the cold feet faith, right?
Yeah.
I mean, take that.
Well, that's okay. Let's see. All right, let's get into cold feet faith now. So, cold feet faith will be the story. Any guesses?
Oh, the story? We haven't even got to
Could have
mark
called
it.
it cold wet feet.
I would say cold. What's it? Cold feet and wet feet.
Oh, we haven't got the cold feet yet. So, cold feet faith. We're going to look at the story of Peter walking on the water.
I was gonna say.
I thought that was the wet.
Yeah,
I'll
could
go
have
there. Cool.
Could've
I'll
been
put
wet.
Peter on that.
That's
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
In the sense it was wet. Actually, I-
Jesus, that's what he
Start
should have
off, okay.
Actually, I started as I started.
Until he started drowning.
He was a cold feet example. As I studied it more,
So you doubted.
his feet got wetter.
Yeah.
I got more impressed with him as I studied it a little more. But so the background of this is Jesus had just finished feeding the 5,000 people. He told the disciples to go ahead across the sea. I'll catch up with you later. He went to pray, and a storm hit while the disciples were crossing the river. And so Jesus was going to meet them on the other side, and they took the boat, so he decided to walk. He walked across the sea to get to the other side. And he saw them, and he was going to walk by them and meet them on the other side. And that's where we pick up our story. So Mark 6:48. You have that?
Okay. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. About the fourth watch of the night, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so he saw them, and he was going to pass by.
I'm like, what's the fourth watch? What would that be like? Midnight?
I don't know if that's
That's like-
6 a.m.
Oh,
or
okay.
3 a.m. I'm not sure. I think
It
it's
was
3
really
a.m.
late,
Maybe
right?
3 a.m.
It's before dawn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right
6.
before dawn.
I guess 6 a.m. then.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 a.m. Because 3 is the third watch.
So he's going to
Yeah.
walk by them.
So he's going to walk by them.
And they're in their boat.
They're in the boat, and there's a storm, and they're straining with the oars. And so Jesus saw them, and he's like, oh, look, they're over there. And he's going to keep walking.
That'll be fine.
So I've heard some people preach, oh, well, Jesus, he caused the storm or whatever. It's like, no, Jesus didn't cause the storm.
Right,
Jesus wouldn't
right.
stop the storm. And they're like, oh, well, Jesus, wanted them to go through the storm, but it's like, no, he was going to walk by them. So Jesus didn't even pay any attention to the storm. He's like, yeah, it's a storm. The fishermen, okay. And so he's going to keep going. It was like, it's like if he tells you, hey, I need you to go to New York to do this thing for me. God does, and if there's turbulence, a little bit of turbulence on your plane, God's not going to go and stop the plane and say, it's like, well, that's what happens when you fly. It's like, so they were crossing the sea. There was some storm, so Jesus was going to walk by. So sometimes we consider something a storm. Jesus may not consider it a storm. Sometimes we give the storm too much attention. It's like, this is just part of getting where we need to go, and it's not even. And so we need to just keep rowing. Just keep rowing. Don't even bother. Some stuff we not even bother with, and keep rowing. So you have. Actually, I have the wrong. It's Matthew 14, verse 26 through 33.
I'm 22.
Yeah, it's 26.
Oh, it's
actually.
26? Okay. Okay, so when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me! Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God.
So this is cold feet faith. So cold feet faith is when you have faith until things get tough. And then you get cold feet. So once you get your feet wet, you lose faith. So this reminds me sort of a few weeks ago, they asked me to read the announcements at church. And so, no, so it was a good thing. And so I read the announcement. I figured I'd put a little humor in it. I started out a little joke. It was the day after daylight saving, so I came out and was like, I'm going to ask you guys to pray for me. As some of you may know, last night I lost an hour of sleep. And everybody started busting up. So it's going great halfway through. Then halfway through, I noticed my hand is shaking. But I wasn't nervous until I saw my hand shaking.
That was cold feet.
That was cold feet.
That was some caffeine.
And so I kept on going, but not sure what happened there. But
He's like, you didn't see that, right?
Probably got the attention from the crowd. He had everyone's attention, and it's all Zion. Now they're really.
but I was like halfway through, so it's like strange. I don't know.
Hard to get up there on stage in front of a bunch of people.
You say, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't done it actually since college. As far as church, that was my first time back in the pulpit since
A few
college.
months ago, Pastor Brian asked if someone needed prayer about something. I forget what it was, but I went up on stage and he just prayed for me. I wasn't talking, but I just looked over and all these people were like looking at me. I'm like, man, I couldn't stand up here and talk. I mean, it was just hard enough to go up there just to have him pray for me.
Yeah.
You know? But to be up there and talking, that's kind of tough.
Yeah, it's tough. So cold feet faith is having faith, but losing it once you start to put the faith in action. So that's cold feet faith. So you have faith.
Sorry. What happens, I think, like for me sometimes, like in my mind, I know that I should trust God. I know God's in control, but my body has another reaction. Like I feel sick. Like I worry and I feel sick. And it's like these just two are not connecting. Like in my mind, I know God's got it. Yeah, God's got it. That this is gonna happen, and I'm gonna be okay. But kind of like the shaking. But my body is doing something else.
Coffee faith having faith, but losing when you put faith into action.
When you start to put the faith into action. Yeah. So Peter lost faith when his feet got wet. So it's losing your faith when the trouble starts. When the wind starts blowing. It's losing your faith when the turbulence comes.
Kind of what you were saying, that just because something gets hard or we're struggling, it doesn't mean that it's not God's will, right? We're talking about that? Yeah, that just because it gets hard and it's
Peter lost his faith
uncomfortable, it doesn't mean it's not God's will.
Right.
When the wind started?
When he got his feet wet. So we look at Peter's faith. So Peter stepped out without a promise. So Jesus didn't say, "Hey, I can make you walk on water." So it's like as you look at it, then you start to see, well, so at one point you think, oh, Peter, he just didn't have little faith, and then it's like if you look at it closely, it's like, well, Peter had quite a bit of faith. It's like so Jesus didn't say, "Hey, I can make you walk." Peter just decided to step out, and Peter said, but not only that, they thought it was a ghost. Then Peter said, "If it is you, then tell me to come out to you." Bless you.
After he did it.
No, before he said, "If it's you, then call me out to come with you." So he didn't even know that it was Jesus for sure. He wasn't even sure it was Jesus. But he was ready to step out on the hopes that it was Jesus. So it's like if we're in a situation, we don't know if it's Jesus or not. It's like, but we want to be ready to step out. But when Jesus said come, when Jesus confirmed it, he stepped out. But Jesus never implied that, hey, I can make somebody walk on water. He never, so it's like, imagine, but Peter said, Peter knew that it was Jesus. So after he got into the boat and stopped the wind, everybody else said, this must certainly be God. After the storm stopped. But Peter stepped out, he already believed it in the middle of the storm. So in a sense, he had strong faith. Yes.
I feel like he played Peter. He did. At the end of the day, like I said, unbeknownst to him, he trusted that it was God, and he took that initiative and went out in the water. And I think just a slight distraction of wind. He was afraid. He didn't know what was going to happen, and I feel like Jesus really kind of was just like, you didn't walk out in full faith, but I don't think he was quite prepared for that challenge. Is what I think.
It's hard to prepare for. Any practice
everyone else was like, it's a ghost, and and then he still. I think he should have got a little bit more credit, at least for getting off the boat.
Yeah, he should have. Because imagine if we saw Jesus walking on the water, like you were out on the boat. You'd be amazed. Like you never heard this story before.
Right.
So you never heard this story before. You saw Jesus walking on the water. You weren't sure even he was the Son of God. And we would say, that's amazing. This guy is amazing. But what you say...
Who would say, let me go?
Who would say, yeah, I want to do that too. Would that even come to your mind?
Well, I'm thinking...
Peter was the wild...
I'm thinking like a parallel that is a different story. Like you're flying in an airplane, you see somebody flying past you outside, just like a person managing to do this. Like, what is going on here? You're not like, hey, let me jump out the window or something. And
You're like,
join
that
them.
guy's amazing.
Yeah.
It's not like,
Right.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Yeah, it's that.
Except if you're
What?
two, sometimes that happens.
Well,
Yeah.
true.
Except
But
if
it's not
what?
that if you're two.
Or if you're
I mean,
two.
but it's
Okay.
smaller scale
Yeah.
things,
Well,
right? Yeah. Try it.
But that sort of wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so Peter thought he had more faith than he did.
It's a cold piece. That guy.
Yeah,
Well, at least,
but-
at least he got pulled back in the boat. I mean,
Yeah.
they could have just let him just sink in the storm.
But you have to give him
Right.
some credit. So a lot of times we
Yeah.
talk about how Jesus walked on water. You know, the miracle of Jesus walking on water, and how, and a lot of people, non-Christians, even know that story. But as Christians, we know that Jesus is God. So it's like you should kind of expect that he can walk on water. It's like, well, Jesus created the water. It's like, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Earth was without form or void. Darkness on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God hovered above the water. And then we know.
Oh, look.
And John says, in the beginning was the Word. All things were made by him. Without not, so all things were made by Jesus. So the Jews, they used to say, or some of them say, that, well, the Spirit of God hovering above the water, that was the Messiah. They say that less now that we talk about Jesus, or Jesus came. But so Jesus, if he hovered above the water at the beginning, it's not too surprising that he walked on it. But Peter was just a guy.
Right. It's like,
And he walked on the
go for
water.
it.
That's a miracle.
If it's Jesus, I'm coming. I totally get what he was thinking. I do. But the wind threw him off. That's all I'm saying. The wind threw him off, and
So
I
he
just
believed.
God just
Right,
said, you
it
know,
did
that's
fall
just too bad. That's
So he
sad.
believed all things were possible
He
through
did.
Christ.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, so we can, so we know, so we shouldn't be afraid. So this is, so the most often command, the command that's given most often in the Bible is fear not. That's the most often command. So Moses even said, fear not, in the passage we read. So they thought Jesus was a ghost. So Jesus was coming by them. It was Jesus, their Messiah, but they thought he was a ghost. So sometimes the things we fear are designed to help us. They're actually there to help us. And it also shows that we can't always recognize Jesus when he shows up. You know, sometimes it's something scary to us, but that's actually Jesus showing up. So if we're going to start out something, so Peter, he asked for confirmation first. So what can we do when we're going to begin something? You can ask for confirmation. So Peter says, if this you, Jesus, so he didn't know if it was Jesus. So he was in a storm. He thought it may be Jesus involved. He wasn't sure. But he said, if this is you, Jesus, tell me to come to you. So he asked for confirmation. So if you're in a storm, you can ask, is this of you, Jesus? Or is this of the enemy? Or is this? So you can ask for confirmation. He said, if it's you, then tell me to come to you. And so if our faith isn't strong enough, we can ask for confirmation. If we're not sure it's Jesus. When we're in a trial. So some people aren't sinking, like Peter sunk, but sometimes it's because we're not taking any risks. And so we don't always know how much faith we have until we're in a trial. And when we're in a trial, we don't want to focus on the what ifs, the past failures, or the worst case scenarios. We don't want to focus on the wind or the storm. So if it's a situation that God put you in, then he's responsible to get you out of it. So keep your eyes focused on Jesus, not the wind. Not the wind. God will be with you. So God will always be with you. So remember that Jesus, so he was going to walk by him, but why did he stop? Because they were afraid. So he's not going to walk by you. So their fear changed his plan. And it says he turned to them immediately. They said, is it a ghost? It says immediately Jesus went. Yeah. And then Peter started to sink. And it says immediately Jesus went to save him. And Peter started to sink, so which is interesting because it's like if you're in a boat fishing and somebody went out and sank into the water, the story wouldn't be, you couldn't say, well, when they started to sink, it's like, no, they stepped out and they sank.
Right.
There is no started. They started to sink, and then they continued sinking, and then they fully sank. No, you don't start till you sink. So, since when Peter started to sink, Jesus immediately went and saved them. So that must have been quick.
No, he cried for the Lord to save him.
Right.
When he started to
When
sing.
he started
asked
to
God,
sing.
he
What does
said,
that
"Please help
mean?"
me. And then that's what we had that.
So he started to lose faith. Yeah, so he had to recognize,
I'm just wondering. I wonder if there's still some support going on there, because I'm not sure if you'd have enough time to say, "Lord, save me." Like, I don't know if you can get that whole sentence out before you. Like, there's got to be something slowing him down a little bit.
Yeah. The fact that you start to sing.
Unless it's just that, like, he started to help and like got the hat out before, and they just
because he said, "Lord, save me."
Right. Yeah.
He said, "Lord, save me." So that's a lot of talking.
It is. Yeah.
He could have been at neck level, like.
I think he was falling slower than he would
falling
otherwise.
slower than normal.
Yeah.
So he was supported, even though he lost his faith. He was still supported. So he recognized that he was God. The other disciples didn't recognize that he was a son of God until the wind stopped. So Peter recognized he was a son of God in the middle of the storm. So the question is, can you recognize God in the middle of your storm? Because that takes faith.
That's what I want to do. I want to be able to recognize God in the middle of the storm.
So to do that, so how did Peter didn't see him, so they were looking at him, he's a ghost. And then Jesus said, "It is I." So Peter recognized his voice. So if once we get to the point where we can recognize God's voice, then we can see him
Then we'll know.
in the storm. Then we'll know. Yeah. So 2 Samuel 22, 17 to 18 tells us. Oh, so this is what God will do when we're in a storm.
He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me.
Right. So that's wet feet faith. No, that's cold feet faith. Get my feet mixed up. My feet faith. Cold feet faith. Any thoughts on cold feet faith? So we had some, I guess, already. So we can all relate to cold feet faith at times. That's the common faith, I guess.
That's having faith, then losing it.
Having faith, and losing it when things get tough. Or starting to doubt when things get tough.
I think one of the things that has helped me when I have cold feet faith is to not hold on to a specific expectation. You know, because it's like when I start to get scared, it's because I can't control what's going to happen,
Right.
or I really want something specific to happen. But when I let go of that and just trust that God's going to do His will, that His will is best for me, when I get scared, it's not as scary because I'm like, I let go of the results to God. You know, I'm not going to try to control it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of times is. Fear is a result of not being in control. It's like we're not in control of the situation. It's in somebody else's hand, or it's in the government hand, or it's in, this other person in a relationship hands, or it's not in your control, and that's when you get afraid. You're not in control of it. It's like, well, I don't know what's going on at the job. It's my manager's decision, though. It's this other person's decision, and so that's when we're afraid. It's like it's not in our control, and so if we turn over the control to God, that's when it gets easier. If we can turn over control to God. So it's not easy to do, but if we say God is in control of everything, it's not me, then it's easier. It's easier not to be afraid.
I think it's so funny because I've seen others find alternative situations other than having their faith in God, but speaking to a coworker, and some of the fears that they have is they go for acupuncture, and they feel like that's the healing to kind of get them away from their fears. There's like certain pressure points that you can get it so that they release a certain type of fear
Right.
that you have. Like,
Yeah, fear and stress. Yeah. Yeah, people do things to relax, which is good to relieve stress.
Yeah.
But faith will do the same thing.
And then, in like the cold feet, I feel like you do give too much attention to what's going on, the outside forces and stuff. And so, and like I had heard it like this, like it's like a shadow. It's kind of like, you know, when you see a shadow, like the object is this little, but then when the shadow comes on it, it looks so big. And then it's kind of like we just need to remember that it's only this. It's only this size. It's not this huge thing. And I think that yeah. And so I just had heard that from my pastor, and I was just like, wow, like we do make things way bigger than what they are. And so, and just trusting in the Lord, you know, He will reveal it. Like it's not even that big. You know, don't even worry about it.
All right. So in conclusion, so dry feet faith is when God fights the battle for you. You don't have to get your feet wet. So you know God is with you before you even start. So we saw that in an example of Moses parting the Red Sea. The miracle happened first. And they kept their feet. They walked across on dry land. Cold feet faith is when you have faith until things get tough. You get cold feet because you focus on the problem instead of focusing on God. Once you get your feet wet, you lose faith. And we saw that example with Peter walking on the water. Wet feet faith is when you can step into the water before God shows up. So you're not afraid to get your feet wet. You're not afraid to start. But even though your confirmation that is from God doesn't come until after you get in. So the confirmation comes after the obedience. So you're obedient before God shows up with a miracle and shows you that it's Him. So you have to have confidence that God is always with you. And we saw an example of that, of the Israelites crossing the Jordan River. So as a mature Christian, God doesn't show up. God doesn't have to show you a miracle in order to encourage you to go into the struggle. You take God at His word, and you can walk into the struggle with full assurance because you have wet feet faith. So we can trust that the waters will stop after we get our feet wet. Trust that God will provide. Trust and embrace the unexpected. Set out for lands that we haven't seen before. So the confirmation will follow the obedience. You'll experience God in the midst of the journey. So you can go ahead and get your feet wet. So Isaiah 43 verse 2 tells us, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. So let's walk in the way, let's seek the truth, and let's live the life.
Amen.
I was thinking about what you said with that sometimes we're not thinking because we're not taking risks. And yeah, that's like we could get complacent and comfortable. But I also know that when you're in that place, you're not content. You know what I'm saying? Like I think we were made to grow and be challenged when we could find a comfortable place and like, but there at the end of the day, it's not like we're not content. Right?
Yeah, because you know there's more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.